What if a single act of kindness in a diner changed the course of a woman's life forever? The Blue Harbor Diner clung to the edge of town like a stubborn memory, its neon sign flickering defiantly against the bruised purple of the evening sky. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of sizzling burgers, bitter coffee, and the faint ache of dreams worn thin by time. Rebecca Johnson, 28, moved through the diner with a grace born of necessity, her apron stained with grease and the weight of unspoken hopes. Her dark hair, swept into a loose bun, framed hazel eyes that carried the scars of too many sleepless nights. Medical bills for her mother's failing heart stacked up like a cruel game of Jenga. Student loans loomed like a guillotine, and her one-bedroom apartment, with its cracked walls and dripping faucet, felt like a cage tightening with each passing day. Yet, Rebecca offered smiles to every customer, even those who tipped in pennies or harsh words, her kindness a quiet rebellion against her circumstances. It was a slow Wednesday evening, the kind where clocks seemed to taunt her with every tick. The diner was nearly empty. Hank, a grizzled trucker with a permanent scowl, nursed his fifth coffee. Emma and Jake, a young couple, bickered over the last slice of cherry pie, and a man in a tailored suit sat alone, his face half hidden behind a newspaper. Rebecca barely noticed him, her attention snagged by a teenage boy slouched in a corner booth. His hoodie was frayed at the cuffs, his sneakers patched with duct tape, and his hands fidgeted with an empty wallet as he stared at the laminated menu. His name, she'd learned later, was Tyler Mendes. His eyes held a hunger deeper than the physical, a quiet shame that Rebecca knew too well from her own moments of scraping by at the pharmacy, counting coins for her mother's heart meds, praying they'd stretch far enough. "Hey, kid," she said softly, approaching his table with a gentleness that belied her exhaustion. "What can I get you?" Tyler mumbled something about just looking, his cheeks flushing red, his voice cracking with the awkwardness of youth. Maybe 16, she guessed. Rebecca recognized that look. It was the same one she'd worn when she stood in line, hoping no one noticed her math wasn't adding up. "Don't worry about it," she said, leaning in to shield his pride. "How about a burger and fries? On the house." She winked, scribbling the order before he could protest. She'd covered the cost from her tips, a small dent in a jar already scraped bare. Without a word, she added a chocolate milkshake to the ticket, sliding it to Marge, the diner's gruff cook, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing, her own heart softened by years of watching Rebecca's quiet sacrifices. Across the diner, the man in the suit lowered his newspaper just enough to watch. Michael Townsend, a venture capitalist who'd spun tech startups into a fortune, observed the exchange with curiosity that felt like a spark in his polished, predictable world. His sharp blue eyes caught every detail. The way Rebecca's kindness flowed without hesitation, the way she brushed off Tyler's stammered thanks with a smile that asked for nothing in return. Michael had seen charity before, but it was usually loud, calculated, a transaction for social capital or tax write-offs. This was different. Raw, unscripted, and it stirred something in him he thought he'd buried under years of boardroom deals and cynicism. Rebecca didn't notice Michael's scrutiny. She was too busy dodging the way of her life. Her mother Ellen's latest hospital stay, the eviction notice taped to her apartment door that morning, the way her bank account mocked her with its $17 balance. When Tyler left, he muttered a shy thank you, slipping into the night like a ghost, his thin frame swallowed by the dark. Rebecca felt a flicker of warmth, a reminder that small acts could still matter, even when the world seemed determined to break her. The next day, Michael returned. He claimed the same booth, his suit as crisp as the day before, his presence a quiet anomaly in the diner's faded charm. He ordered a coffee and waited until the lunch rush ebbed, the diner settling into a rare calm. When Rebecca approached to refill his cup, he slid a sleek business card across the table, embossed with Project Upstart in gold foil. "I saw what you did for that kid," Michael said, his voice smooth but carrying a weight that made her pause. "I run a program to help people like you, people with heart and resilience, but not enough resources. I'd like to sponsor your education, maybe even a career path. Whatever you're dreaming of, I can help make it happen." Rebecca froze, the card heavy in her hand. Suspicion flared like a reflex. Nobody offered something for nothing, not in her world. "Why me?" she asked, her tone sharp, her eyes searching for a crack in the facade. "What's the catch?" "No catch," Michael replied, meeting her gaze with steadiness that felt almost too perfect. "I invest in people who deserve it. You're one of them." She wanted to believe him, but life had taught her that miracles came with hidden costs. She tucked the card into her apron, promising to think it over, her mind already churning with questions. That night, alone in her apartment, she sat under the dim glow of a single bulb, the card staring back at her like a challenge. She Googled Michael Townsend and found a patchwork of his life. Tech mogul, philanthropist, and a few dark whispers of controversy. Lawsuits, disgruntled partners, a startup that collapsed amid vague accusations of fraud. Nothing proven, but enough to make her wary. Project Upstart was real, though. Articles showcased its graduates, people lifted from poverty to purpose, their stories glowing with possibility. Could this be her escape from the endless cycle of double shifts and debt? Or was it a trap wrapped in hope? What would you do if a stranger offered you a lifeline, but every instinct screamed it might come with invisible chains? The next week, Rebecca's world began to fracture. The eviction notice wasn't a bluff. Her landlord was done with late payments, giving her 30 days to vacate. Her mother's latest hospital bill arrived, a sledgehammer at $12,000, mocking her $17 in savings. Desperate, she called Michael. He didn't hesitate. By the next day, her rent was paid, and her mother's medical bills were covered. He even arranged a temporary apartment near the hospital, a clean one-bedroom with a view of the harbor's restless waves, a far cry from a crumbling studio. Gratitude battled skepticism in her chest, but the relief was a lifeline she couldn't refuse. Michael invited her to his downtown office, a glass-walled fortress that gleamed with wealth and power. He laid out a plan. Full funding for nursing school, a stipend for living expenses, and mentorship to launch a healthcare initiative for underserved communities. It was everything she dreamed of in the quiet moments between shifts, but the sheer scale of it felt like a fever dream. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling with hope and doubt. "Why are you doing this? What do you get out of it?" Michael's smile was warm, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I get to see someone like you change the world. That's enough." Before she could press further, a man strode into the office unannounced. Paul Strickland was lean, with a predator's grin and eyes that seemed to peel back her defenses in seconds. "So, you're Michael's latest project," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. He introduced himself as a former business partner, now a consultant with a grudge. As Michael stepped out to take a call, Paul leaned closer, his voice a venomous hiss. "Be careful with him. Rebecca, Michael's not the saint he plays at. Ask him about the lawsuits. Ask him about the lives he's ruined." Rebecca's stomach twisted. Back at the diner, Paul's words clung to her like damp fog. She dove deeper into Michael's past online, finding allegations of shady deals, employees pushed out, a startup that imploded amid whispers of fraud. Nothing concrete, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. When she met Michael again, she didn't hold back. "Is it true?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Did you screw people over to build your empire?" Michael's face darkened, but his tone stayed even. "Paul's bitter. He lost a deal years ago and blames me. I've made mistakes, Rebecca, but I'm not the villain he paints me as. Look at what I'm doing for you. Does that seem like someone who ruins lives?" His words were convincing, but Paul's warnings echoed. Then the threats began. Anonymous texts lit up her phone at odd hours. "Back off, Townsend. You're in too deep." One night, she found her car tires slashed outside the diner. The word "quit" scratched into paint. Fear became her shadow, but so did resolve. She wasn't just fighting for herself. Her mother's health, Tyler's future, and her own dreams hung in the balance. Rebecca turned to the diner's community for support. Marge, the cook with a heart as big as her bark, overheard her talking to Hank about the threats and rallied the regulars. They started a crowdfunding campaign, spreading the word through flyers and social media. Tyler, now a fixture of the diner, helped build a website for the campaign, his shy demeanor giving way to fierce loyalty. Donations trickled in, $5 from Hank, $20 from Emma and Jake, $10 from a single mom who knew Rebecca's struggle. It wasn't enough to erase her debts, but it was a reminder that she wasn't alone. The threats escalated. One night, a brick crashed through her new apartment's window, a note tied to it. Leave Townsend or else. Rebecca's hands shook as she called Lena, a private investigator Michael recommended. Lena was a grizzled ex-cop with a no-nonsense demeanor and a knack for sniffing out lies. "This smells like a vendetta," Lena said, studying the note. "Whoever's doing this has more to lose than you." Rebecca found Tyler at the diner, hunched over a borrowed laptop. The kid had a gift for computers, and he'd been digging into Paul's past. "This guy's bad news," Tyler said, showing her a digital trail of shell companies linked to Paul, businesses tied to fraud, extortion, even blackmail. "He's not just after Michael. He's trying to scare you because you're part of Michael's plan." But Tyler's digging uncovered something darker. Clara Evans, a former employee of Michael's who'd vanished after a public fallout. Rumors swirled that she'd been paid off or worse, silenced. Rebecca's heart sank. Was Michael hiding something sinister? She confronted him at his office, her voice shaking with anger. "Who's Clara Evans? Did you hurt her?" Michael's composure cracked, his eyes flickering with something like guilt. "Clara was my assistant," he said quietly. "She got caught in Paul's crossfire. He spread lies about her, ruined her career. I tried to help her, but she disappeared. I don't know where she is." Rebecca didn't know what to believe. The threats were real, but so was Michael's help. She took Tyler's evidence to Lena, who dug deeper. Lena uncovered a web of deceit. Paul had orchestrated the lawsuits against Michael, bribing witnesses and forging documents. He'd even paid a former employee to spread lies about Michael's business practices. The threats against Rebecca were his desperate attempt to derail Michael's latest project, her. But Lena found something bigger. Paul was linked to a larger scheme, funneling money through offshore accounts, defrauding investors, and targeting anyone who got too close to the truth. Clara Evans, it turned out, was alive, living under a new name in another state, too scared to come forward until Lena tracked her down. As Lena built the case, Paul's attacks grew bolder. One night, Rebecca was followed home from the diner, a dark sedan trailing her through the empty streets. Her heart pounded as she floored the gas, barely making it to her apartment before Lena's team intercepted the driver, a hired thug linked to Paul. The next day, Paul showed up at the diner, his grin sharper than a blade. "You're an over-your-head waitress," he sneered, leaning across the counter. "Walk away now, or you'll lose more than your dreams." Rebecca stood her ground, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "I'm not walking away. Not from Michael, not from my future." The diner went silent, every eye on her. Marge stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. "You heard her, creep. Get out." Hank stood, cracking his knuckles. Emma and Jake glared. Even Tyler, barely taller than the counter, squared his shoulders. Paul left, but his threat lingered like a storm cloud. What would you risk to protect the people who believe in you, even when the truth feels like a moving target? Lena's investigation reached its climax weeks later. Clara Evans agreed to testify, her statement exposing Paul's lies and clearing Michael's name. Paul was arrested in a dramatic raid, his empire of deceit collapsing under the weight of evidence. The lawsuits against Michael were dismissed, and Clara, though shaken, found closure. Rebecca, though exhausted, felt a weight lift. The diner community celebrated with her, throwing an impromptu party with free coffee, Marge's famous pie, and a playlist of Springsteen hits on the jukebox. Hank raised a mug, toasting to Rebecca, the toughest waitress in Blue Harbor. But the story didn't end there. Michael kept his promise, funding Rebecca's nursing school with no strings attached. He also offered Tyler a scholarship through Project Upstart, recognizing the boy's talent for coding. Rebecca's mother, Ellen, underwent successful heart surgery, her recovery a quiet miracle funded by Michael's generosity. As Rebecca stepped into her first day of nursing school, she felt a spark she hadn't known in years. Hope, bright and unshakable. The Blue Harbor Diner became a beacon of that hope. Rebecca's act of kindness for Tyler had set off a chain reaction, touching lives she never imagined. Michael, once a stranger in a suit, became a mentor and friend, his own faith in humanity restored by Rebecca's resilience. Tyler, once a hungry kid, was thriving in a coding boot camp, his laptop a canvas for new possibilities. And Rebecca, once a waitress drowning in debt, was on her way to becoming a nurse, determined to build a healthcare initiative for communities like hers. Hey, if you're loving this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of heart and hustle. Months later, Rebecca returned to the diner for a community fundraiser, now a local legend. The event was packed, regulars, new faces. Even the mayor showed up, drawn by the story of the waitress who'd turned a burger and fries into a movement. Tyler, now confident in his coding skills, unveiled a website he'd built for Rebecca's future healthcare initiative, a platform to connect underserved patients with resources. It was sleek, user-friendly, and already buzzing with donations. "This is for you," Tyler said, his voice steady, "because you believed in me first." Michael was there too, quieter now, his own battles won. He handed Rebecca a folder with a deed to a small clinic on the edge of town, the first step toward her dream. "This is yours," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Build something that lasts." Ellen, Rebecca's mother, was there, walking with a cane but stronger every day. She hugged her daughter tightly, tears in her eyes. "You've always been my hero," she whispered. Tyler, overhearing, chimed in, "Mine too." As the fundraiser wound down, Rebecca stepped outside the diner, the neon sign casting a warm glow over the harbor. The water lapped gently against the docks, and the stars above seemed brighter than usual. She thought back to that quiet Wednesday evening, when a simple act of kindness had changed everything. The threats, the fear, the uncertainty, they'd all been worth it for this moment, for the lives she'd touched and the future she'd build. 1 year later, the clinic opened its doors, a modest building with a sign that read Johnson Community Health. It served the uninsured, the overlooked, the people who reminded her of herself and Tyler. Michael attended the ribbon cutting. Standing quietly in the back, his pride evident but unspoken, Tyler, now a part-time coder for a local startup, had built an app to streamline patient care, dedicating it to Rebecca. Ellen, fully recovered, volunteered at the clinic, greeting patients with the same warmth her daughter had always shown. The diner remained a touchstone. Rebecca visited when she could, slipping behind the counter to pour coffee for Hank or tease Marge about her pie recipe. The neon sign still flickered, but it felt like a heartbeat now, steady and alive. Rebecca's story had become part of Blue Harbor's fabric, a reminder that kindness wasn't just a moment. It was a movement, one that could change lives, one meal, one dream at a time. 2 years after that fateful Wednesday, Rebecca stood at the podium of a regional healthcare conference, sharing her journey. The room was filled with nurses, doctors, and policymakers, all listening to the waitress-turned-nurse who'd built a clinic from a single act of kindness. She spoke of Tyler, now a rising star in tech, and Michael, who'd quietly expanded Project Upstart to reach more communities. She spoke of her mother, who'd found purpose in helping others heal. And she spoke of the diner, where it all began, a place where strangers became family. As she finished, the crowd rose in a standing ovation. But Rebecca's eyes were on the horizon. The clinic was just the start. She envisioned a network of community health centers, each one a beacon of hope for those who'd been forgotten. She'd already begun mentoring others, including a young nurse named Lila, who reminded her of herself, tough, kind, and ready to fight for a better future. Back at the diner, a new waitress named Sarah took over Rebecca's old shifts. One evening, she noticed a hungry kid in a corner booth, his wallet empty, his eyes downcast. Without hesitation, she slid a burger and fries in front of him, winking. "On the house," she said. In the back, Marge smiled, knowing the legacy lived on. Rebecca's life had come full circle, not in a straight line, but in a ripple that spread outward, touching lives she'd never know. As she walked out of the conference, her phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "You did it. Proud of you." She smiled, the neon glow of the diner vivid in her memory. The road ahead was long, but it was hers, built on a foundation of kindness that would never fade.